So I think I started getting into NLP in about 1996. And at the time I was working for an IT company, I was a manager, and we had a big training budget, so they were trying to encourage people to do MBAs. So I looked at an MBA curriculum, it was all quantitative learning and stuff, and it looked entirely boring, and I couldn't understand or think how I could apply that to anything I was doing. At the same time, NLP was just filtering over from the US, from California. And I looked at it, I met somebody who knew some people in the UK. It sounded interesting. I went to an introduction similar to this, and I thought, wow, there's a lot in this NLP, so let me find out more. Because for me, I was working in a business where there were a lot of people problems. Managers didn't know how to manage, leaders didn't know how to lead, teams didn't know how to be teams, people didn't know how to take responsibility for their own actions. So whereas managers were looking for structure and reorganization to try and fix things, I was looking at relationships between people and how to fix things. And that's where NLP came in. So I did intensive training. I did a practitioner course of 22 days, a master practitioner course of 22 days. I did 2 master practitioner courses, and then I went round a lot of the big NLP courses being an assistant for their practitioner courses. Then I went to Germany and did NLP trainer training. I just couldn't get enough of it. And then eventually when I was bored of the IT industry, because I go back 10 years and I get bored of stuff, then I do something else. So I decided to set up a company doing NLP training, which I did for about 15 years, and we had groups of people just like this coming along, doing practitioner, master practitioner courses. And then I got fed up of doing that, tired of doing that, so I ended up doing one-to-one coaching using NLP. And it wasn't until I met this chap, Marcus, and until COVID came along, that I realized that NLP will be really useful for lots of people, because I'd been using it for myself in a lot of ways to help me to improve myself and develop myself and learn new things. So I have brought some books around. I wrote my first book in 1996, I think it was. At the time, the Institute of Management approached me and said, we're looking for somebody to write a book about NLP for managers. And I said, yeah, I could probably do that. So I wrote them a book. They started selling it. And then they said, right, we want an NLP book on confidence. Can you write that? And I said, yeah, I could do that, but it's the same stuff. It's the same stuff. You know? And they said, doesn't matter, we've got to have a book with confidence with NLP on the front cover. I said, okay, fine, I'll do that. So then they wanted was it NLP and all kinds of things. So I've written about 7 books all in all for Pearson Education, and most of them are translated in just about any language you can think of. So if anybody prefers a foreign language, I can bring some of those books into it. So most of my books do relate to organizations and management, but NLP really is for the individual, and it really is an understanding of how we create our own reality, how we do that with our senses, with our relationships with other people, so we can make better decisions for ourselves and not get distracted by things that perhaps are not so useful for us. So that's a little bit about my background. Can I just do a quick poll to see, what the knowledge is? Has anybody done any NLP training? Okay. Anybody done a practitioner course? Great. Dave, isn't it?
Ray.
Ray, sorry, Ray, of course. I knew it was one syllable. Yeah, did you do master? Go on to do master?
No, just practitioner 1 and 2.
Okay, who did you do that with?
PPD, I think.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah, it's PPD, yeah. So, yeah, I know those guys in London. Yeah. So I'll just give you a little bit of history about NLP. It did start in the University of California, Richard Bandler and John Grinder. And Richard Bandler was kind of an assistant, and he used to work in this bookstore that had a big selection of psychology books. So he got interested in psychology. And there he met John Grinder, who was a lecturer in linguistics. And they kind of got together. And they were both dissatisfied with the current state of psychiatry in the US. That if somebody wasn't functioning properly, they weren't normal. So they had to be sedated or kept in some kind of confinement or go into a hospital because you weren't operating properly. And Richard Bandler said, no, there is no normal. There are only people that function in different ways. And instead of giving them, sedating them and giving them, lots of medicines and that kind of thing and treating them as if they're ill, you have to understand them. You have to understand how they're creating their reality. And if you understand how they're creating your reality, you can join them at what's real for them and not tell them it's an illusion, what's real for them, and work with it. And this is the beginning of what we call pacing and leading in NLP. If you want to help somebody to change, the first thing you have to do is to join them where they're at. And we've all experienced, people who are, they're going along with the narrative, and you're trying to convince them that there's some data out there that, that the reality that you're getting is actually not the truth. And they won't have it, because that's not their reality. So you have to join them in their reality first, get some rapport with the person, and then you can lead them to somewhere else. And that might take a minute, it might take an hour, it might take days, weeks. Some people it might take years, depending on how far down one end of a continuum of stuck in the trance they are. So they started running little groups in University of California with about 8 to 10 people, and that's where they were learning about NLP. And so instead of teaching people things, they were asking them questions. If I said to you, which way does your front door open? Right? Do you know which way your front door opens? How do you know which way your front door opens sitting here?
Visuals.
You visualize it, right? You visualize your front door, and you go, yeah, it's my front door. It's green or red or whatever, and you have a little picture in your mind. And you realize that human functioning, in terms of how we operate and how we make decisions, first of all starts with some kind of imagery, some kind of maybe auditory. You might have said, yeah, how does my front door open? You might have said that to yourself. Or there were feelings. Some people might feel, oh yeah, I can imagine feeling the knob, and I turn it that way. So people have different ways of connecting with their outer experience through their inner senses. And so they kind of explored this with these small groups, and Richard Bandler was very, very good at his invention, really. I would say invention, but his discovery was what we call submodalities. So the modality of sight, of hearing, of taste, of smell, and of feeling, all have submodalities, which means, are your pictures bright and clear, or are they fuzzy and grey? When you speak to yourself, do you speak to yourself in a voice that says, it's going to be one of those days? Or do you say, hey, I wonder what today's going to bring? So we have tonality to our inner voice as well. And we also have feelings. So that's where the exploration began. And of course students were fascinated by this, because what Bandler and Grinder realized is that by combining the linguistic side to the sensory side, they could help people to change very, very quickly. People that were still holding on to limiting beliefs that had been implanted there by their parents, by the school teachers, by their peers, by colleagues, by things they'd seen on the TV, by just notions that they'd got from the environment that weren't necessarily helping them. So they developed techniques to very, very rapidly, quickly change a person's internal, what we call representation, to one that was more useful for them. And all the time I've been doing NLP, I could tell you so many stories of people that would say, I can't function properly because. And then when you find out what it is that they're not functioning about, and you apply a simple technique, you can help to change them very, very quickly indeed. But that's going to be a bit down the line. So today's an introduction. Sunday workshop's going to focus on the linguistic aspects of NLP, because when you meet people who perhaps don't agree with your point of view, and you would like to get them to kind of move towards your point of view in some way, then language is usually the way that we do that. We'll be looking at language. Now, NLP was was originally a modelling technology. Now, when I say modelling technology, when Bandler was working in that bookshop, he found some interesting books. He found a book by Virginia Satir. And Virginia Satir was a family therapist, very, very successful in what she was doing, helping dysfunctional families to unite again, whereas other psychiatrists, psychologists, whatever, had failed because they were using old systems. So he went along and met Virginia Satir and modelled her process, how she does that. If you want to learn something, find somebody that's doing it well and model their process, and then take that process on for yourself. So she became quite a valuable input to what became known as NLP. The next person that they found was Fritz Perls, who was the father of Gestalt therapy. And they said, I think it was Bandler said to Grinder, "You gotta come and see this guy. You know, he puts chairs in the room, and he gets you to imagine there are people sitting in those chairs, and then they talk to themselves, and then they change." You know, and that was Gestalt therapy. So they took in Gestalt therapy into NLP, and they modelled what Fritz Perls was doing, and say, okay, now we have an understanding of what we call perceptual positions. So, in essence, if you want to understand somebody, imagine them sitting in that chair, and imagine them, then you being them, and looking back at you, and how they're perceiving you. The next person that they discovered was doing something magic was Milton Erickson. Milton Erickson was a hypnotherapist, doing things that no other therapist was doing. He was changing people with just his voice. The story goes that he was in a wheelchair. He could only see the colour purple, so most of the time he just wore purple pyjamas in his wheelchair. And his clients would come to him, and he'd sit in his wheelchair, and he'd look at them, and he'd say something like, "So, you want to change, do you?" And within about a minute, they'd be in a hypnotic trance, and he'd be saying all kinds of things, and suddenly they'd come out of the trance, and they'd be a different person. So they modelled what Milton Erickson was doing, and much of the language that you hear in the mainstream media, I would call Miltonian language, and it can be used for good things, and it can be used for bad things. I mean, NLP is like it's like a knife. You can use it for good stuff or bad stuff. So Milton Erickson brought the idea of trance and using language in a number of ways. There's something called a Milton model language, which we'll look at on Sunday, and also the antidote to that, which is metamodal language. So for example, if I wanted to use Milton language, and would I do that to a group of people I only met for a short period of time? But knowing how easily we can all learn, and how we can take in information and use that information to help our lives, is a wonderful example of Milton language, right? So what I've just said is nothing, right? I've just an example of Milton language. So you might say, how do we use that? In what way do we use it? And what exactly do we use specifically? And when do we use it? So that would be something like the meta model to get some clarity. So the leaders who I have this personal view of leadership. I think leadership is like gone. It's the old school. You know, I don't think we want leaders anymore. You know, because we don't know very much about these people. You know, I've never met Barack Obama. I don't know if he's a good person or a bad person. But I know lots of people that have seen and heard him speak on television that think he's brilliant and fantastic because he speaks well. And he uses Miltonian language because he's been taught to use Miltonian language when he gives his leadership presentations. And it gets people to really think this person is a real leader, you know, listen to him speak. But you don't know anything about the person, you know. They might go home, and at home, you know, they're walking around their underpants, scratching their arse, hitting their kids, you know, whatever. You just don't know what these people are up to. So Miltonian language does have a positive effect. For example, if you want to give yourself some positive messages, like, do you know what? I've decided that whatever happens today, it's going to be the right thing, you know, and I'm going to have a really happy day, and I'm going to smile as much as I like. That would be a great use of multi language. But more of that on Sunday. We're going to go into that in depth on Sunday. So it's a modeling technology, and when I stopped training NLP, I decided that I was just going to use it for myself. So how do you become a good musician? Well, you find some good musicians and you model them. How do they do it? You know, how you don't just watch their fingers. You want to know what goes in their head. You want to know what they say to themselves. You want to see what imagery they have. You want to know what dedication and commitment and sense of purpose they have towards their craft. And then you take that on board and you replicate that for yourself. So many people I've heard around when I'm looking for musicians, and I hear somebody sing and I go, boy, you can sing. In fact, just the other day I met somebody that they had a few beers and I was playing a guitar and they just started singing along, and it was a really great bluesy voice. And I said, come here, girl, let's do some music. She said, oh, I can't sing. And I said, yeah, you can. I just heard you. You know, you can sing, girl. And she said, no, my stepfather always said I was rubbish. And I'm going, how long has she been holding that belief in her head and limiting herself? You know, and this is kind of what happens. You know, we don't go to school to learn anything. We go to school to get indoctrinated. You know, and sometimes, you know, we don't choose our parents. Our parents, you know, it's a tough thing, parenting, isn't it? I think I've got 2 boys, and I think it's the toughest thing I've ever done. But parenting is, you either get good parents that bring you up well, or you might get shit parents. I had shit parents, but because I rebelled against them, I had to find my own way in life. So it depends how you react and how you respond to that. But the important thing is what kind of limiting beliefs are you carrying with you that you've got from childhood, from adolescence, for example, or maybe you've had a job and the boss was really bad to you and you've had some beliefs around that, and you've taken those on board and you've held those, and it stopped you from doing things that you might be very good at or they might like to do. So in further sessions, we'll be looking at some more of the individual, how do we empower ourselves? How do we empower ourselves to be the best that we can be? And for me, that's where NLP really has the best effect. And Neuro LInguistic Programming, okay, the story goes that Richard Bandler was going in his car one day, he'd been to the bookstore and got a load of books, and they were in the footwell of his car, and somebody stopped him and said, oh, hey Richard, what are you doing today? And you looked down and there was a book, it said Neuro LInguistic Programming. He said, I'm doing Neuro LInguistic Programming. And it's about the mind, how we use the mind, how we use our language, our spoken language, our body language, our physiology, to program ourselves to generate the behavior that gets us the results that we want. But I like to think of it as different. I like to think of it as nurturing lovely people. And I think that's much better than NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming. So is anybody here that doesn't know anything about NLP, or you just heard a little bit about it? Or? A little bit, okay. All right, fine. I'm really pleased that not many of you are taking notes, right? Because one of the things about NLP is, I'm not going to talk for very much longer, we're going to get interactive. It's all about engaging and in groups with other people and exploring things for ourselves. So are there any questions before I move on to the topic?
Yeah, I'd like to hear some examples of NLP being used in a narrative that you've noticed.
In the narrative?
In the COVID narrative from the TV and stuff.
Okay, that's interesting. That's going to be the first exercise. I don't watch TV at all. I might listen to Radio 4 a little bit just to see what they're saying, but not at all. I just don't watch TV because the whole thing is subliminal. I mean, the visuals, the sound is all subliminal. I don't need to know what the rules are because I'm just going to break them anyway. One of the other people that were very strong influences on Richard Bandler and John Grinder was Gregory Bateson, who was an anthropologist. I'm sure you have books by Bateson. He wrote some very complicated books. But at the time he was doing research in suicides in the US, and he was modeling the way that parenting worked in the US that caused so many child suicides. And he found out that a lot of parents were telling their children that it wasn't safe to go out on your own. You know, don't stray too far from home. Look after yourself. If you're getting in any danger, come home. There was a lot of this kind of fear, safety. You know, look after yourself. And of course, when we take on that fear, and that becomes in our mind, we tend to find it. We tend to attract what it is that we're thinking about. So if you're always thinking about being in danger, you're going to get into a lot of danger. That's kind of how the law of attraction works, you know. You find it attracts you. So he looked for a community of people that where children were not committing suicide, where they were being raised to be confident, empowered individuals. And he found it in a community in Bali. And one of the stories goes that there's this tree, a certain tree that grows in Bali, and the boughs come over like this. And so when the kids are old enough to climb trees, they all climb in these trees, and they hang on the boughs and they play in the tree. Every now and again, you get a new kid come along that doesn't know the game. So they climb in the tree, and they're hanging on a branch, and all the other kids wait for the signal and go, okay, and they all let go at the same time and drop to the floor, and this kid goes, wing, flying through the air. And then they'll go and land on the ground somewhere and bump their head or their knee or something, and they'll go home to mum going, oh yeah, I climbed the tree and the boys did this and that. And he said, interesting thing is the parents would look at the child and say, okay, go back and learn the game. Whereas in the US it was, oh, what happened to you? Oh, you poor boy, come here, mummy will look after you. It's like, I need my mummy to take care of me. And that was a clear distinction between you know, in terms of parenting, how you grow up, how you kind of acquire those values and those beliefs about whether things are safe or not safe, whether you're confident or empowered to do things or you're not. So Bateson was had quite a strong influence on them. Now, I don't know, can you all see this? Pretty much, I hope. Okay, so the model works in different ways. Right? So one of the things about NLP is that you would have thought with such an effective therapeutic set of tools that people in the health service would grab hold of it and say, wow, this is brilliant, let's use this and we can fix all our patients instead of giving them drugs. But they didn't. No, they said, no, it's witchcraft, it's snake oil, you know, it can't possibly work. So Richard Bandler found himself, sidelined because they wouldn't take him seriously. But one of the reason why the mainstream did not embrace NLP was that you can't put it in a box. Weeks of Ireland and Scotland and help those guys to, get their instruments out, get in the parks and start playing and get your freedom back and get your joy back into your life. Because the values and beliefs that I hold are that, you see so many people just going along with this ridiculous set of instructions that they're getting from this mafia that live in number 10. So it's important for me to do what I can to try and wake people up, to try and maintain my own well-being, and I believe it's possible. I do believe it's possible. If not, I wouldn't be trying it. So it gives me the capability. When Marcus asked me to help out here, I thought, wow, what a great opportunity, what a great venture this is. And set on some great values and some great beliefs and sense of purpose. So it just was natural for me to come and hang out here and help wherever I can. And so my behaviour's changed. I used to get up at about 10:30 in the morning, no purpose. I'll play some music, I'll do some Tai Chi, some Qigong. I'll go down the shops, I'll ride my bike or something. Now it's like I don't have enough hours in the day. You know? I'm just so busy doing things that I never thought I would be doing. I never thought I'd be, you know, an electrician again. I left that. I served 6 years in the Royal Navy being an electrician. I never thought I'd do that again until recently. I've been doing Tai Chi for about 25 years. I never thought I'd teach Tai Chi again until recently. I never thought I'd teach NLP again until recently. So my behaviour's changed very, dramatically. And so my environment has also changed. You know, I go to different places, I see different people, I engage with lots of people, more people than ever used to now. So you can see kind of how this model works. And when we get into, for those of you that want to stay with the journey of NLP on later workshops, we'll be using this model to help change, if you have any limiting values or beliefs or a sense of identity you think doesn't fit for yourself, or if you're lacking some purpose, we can use the techniques of NLP to create change. And what the model really says is, where do you want to go in to make that change? Where's the best level? What tends to happen in society is that if we want to make a change, we change the environment, and we think that's going to change behaviour. So, if somebody's misbehaving, criminal, whatever, we lock them up in jail and think that environment will make them better. Well, it usually doesn't. We let them out and they become a better criminal. A lot of behaviour change in schools, in organisations, in businesses. We don't want people to do that anymore, we want them to do this. So it's like trying to get people to do things differently on a behavioural level. And that's why a lot of companies struggle with change, because they don't understand that change happens at these higher levels. You can try and change capability through training people. If they want to be trained, fine. If they don't want to be trained, it's not going to work. So if you go to the higher level and look at values and beliefs and make some change here, then you're going to start to get change all the way down the model. If I suddenly believe I can do something, then I start to do it. I start to try it. I start to practice it. I improve my capability. My behaviour changes, and then my environment is going to change. I would never have dreamed in a million years that one day I will be busking in Stroud High Street. And then, of course, your identity changes, and then your purpose changes. So the higher level you make the change, you get change at the levels all the way down. So if I decide my purpose is going to be different, if I decide that, do you know what, I'm not making any progress with waking people up, so I'm going to be, I don't know, what are these people, the parsons in the high street?
Street parsons.
Street parsons, right, who look after people that get drunk and lose their way home, or lose their shoes, or some other hardship happens to them. So I might decide that's a purpose, and you imagine if you change your purpose, all these other levels change. There is, you can get change up from environment. And one example of that is, there's a group of people in the US that I learned about, where you have adolescent children who are just destructive, they're horrible to their parents can't manage them, they're aggressive, they swear a lot, and they just they can't make friends, nobody likes them, and they're kind of on a downward slope. So what they do is they take them out into the desert, and they go, right, you can only eat if you catch and make your own food. If it rains, you make your own shelter. And at first these kids just start kicking and shouting as if like they were at home. After a couple of days, they suddenly get the message, and they start finding food and making food, etc. in a week. So change can happen upwards, but it's usually a much harder struggle to do it that way. If we can make change this way, it's a much easier thing. So, are there any questions on this before I offer you an exercise?
Well, in terms of environment, when you spend the people you spend most time with also has a direct effect on everything else, right? So
Absolutely.
if you're constantly getting, like you were saying, with parents who are telling you, giving you limiting beliefs, then you're going to be in that sort of vibration. Whereas if you are being surrounded by people who are lifting you up, then it's much easier to lift yourself up.
Exactly,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So the environment thing doesn't have to be that hard, but we make it hard. Like it's about loving and letting go of those that aren't really lifting each other up.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Your environment. It's the people you meet. It's the physical environment as well. Definitely.
That environment. There was a good documentary a while ago. They took some elderly people from the home who really, didn't move much, really kind of, and they moved them into the environment back into the 50s.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
The music, everything, and at the end of it, it was just different people.
Yeah.
More energy, you looked younger.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah. The environment has a big impact. Yeah. So it changed their behaviour. Did it change their capability?
Yes. I think so.
Did it change any of their values and beliefs about anything? We might not know that, but yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I would say something else about environment. Yeah, so, okay, well, look, a little exercise, right? Because one of the questions you asked is, what are some of the messages that we're kind of getting through the narrative? Right? So, if you partner up with someone, right, and see which of these levels are being targeted by the narrative. How many of these levels are being targeted by the narrative that you see or you hear around the place? Thinking about what comes through the TV, what comes through the radio, what you see when you're out and about in the streets. So if I give you about 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes, find somebody, work with, and look at this model and just say, are they targeting purpose, identity, values and beliefs? Which levels are they targeting?
That's my immediate.
Anybody want us to make a suggestion first? On which levels you think they've been working on, and what specifically?
I think it's environment, especially because you see people wearing a mask, and then if you're the only one who's not wearing a mask, you feel very small and alone.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
tough there.
Yeah. So the masks. So seeing the masks around, definitely environmental. Yeah. Anyone else?
We were saying the beliefs and values, so change from what we consider normal to this kind of communistic collectivism.
Yeah.
Massive push towards that.
Yeah. It's that's odd, isn't it? It's like suddenly doing what the government wants is important, and then believing this stuff, taking the belief that there really is this dangerous virus that we need to protect ourselves from. So this whole kind of safety thing.
So every Thursday we all get on well, not all of us, but a lot of people, queue up at 8 o'clock to all clap the NHS and all feel good about themselves and the virtue signalling. And, extraordinary.
Absolutely.
I think the new belief that freedom is selfish, that's very disturbing.
Yeah. Yeah, and also its capability. When we were touring Ireland, they've been locked down for a while, and they've got full-on COVID passports. You can't get in anywhere, without a passport. And the musicians weren't allowed out in the parks or anything. But they suddenly, we got there, we just set up in a park, started playing, and these marshals came over and said, "What are you doing?" We said, "We're playing music." They said, "No, you're not. You have to have a permit, and it takes 3 days." I said, "Okay." We just plugged in and started playing, and all these other musicians came and all joined in, and then there was a big party in the park in Dublin, and these 3 Garda cars arrived, and we thought, "Oh, here we go." They didn't get involved. They just stood back, and they saw people enjoying themselves and having a good time, and left us alone. And a lot of those musicians came up to us and said, "Well, we're really pleased that you did this, because we would never have come out if it wasn't for you guys. We would have just stayed at home, because that's what we've been used to. That's the new environment that they accepted, if you like." Yeah. Any others?
Yeah, my sense with the narrative is that it began with the purpose, was connected with love.
Right.
And everyone's behaviour began from that, we're caring, we're loving, this is how we show love, and then working it down.
So this is about protecting others, right?
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. But the original place that people felt they were coming from was love, and come down a few to behaviour, straight into it's all fear-based. Into this total alternative reality, the simultaneous environment that's happening alongside this one, which is choosing love, but this is, it's all fear-based.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all these messages that jab the kids to protect granny. It's like there's a new purpose. We need to look after ourselves. We can only look after ourselves if we all get jabbed up. So it's fairly high level stuff. Any others?
Well, what I was thinking when we were talking about this was that, just as a learning exercise, where this kind of is interesting is that there's really two of these going on, isn't there? There's a purpose that we want to take care of everyone and make sure everyone's protected. I actually don't think that is their purpose. Their purpose is on another board, something different.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so this is hard to kind of really fathom, because the information we're working with, even just for this exercise, is not necessarily how it actually is. And where we know that, how we come to that sense is because from that purpose, which isn't actually the purpose, you come down to the behaviours that are incongruent with that purpose, because they're actually instructing actions that do not align with that purpose. And that incongruence causes a kind of
Absolutely.
kind of cognitive dissonance. That's where the model works, because you wouldn't have that. You would have a full sense of congruence right through.
Yeah, and it's a shame not many people recognise that, but you only have to watch any of these people talking about the pseudo alignment, if you like, or the narrative. And this notion of congruity and incongruity is quite central to NLP. It's like believing one thing but doing something else, or believing one thing and doing something else.
Yeah, I mean, a great example of that many people have put forward is that if the government's purpose was to keep everyone well, they would for years would have mandated good diets, abolition of crap foods and all sorts of things, and vitamin D and other well-known things, which they obviously never ever have.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's so obvious, isn't it? It's just so clear that suddenly, would all these people's values suddenly change overnight? Well, suddenly we're all being philanthropists. We're all being caring for everybody when they've never cared for anybody before. What would they suddenly change? Definitely. And also in the environment, you've got all these stickers everywhere. Keep apart. Wear a mask, all this stuff in shops everywhere.
How
it's
quickly
like
that all sprouted up.
Wow.
Again, like the plexiglass. Like, thank you for having a plexiglass while your hands are all over the fruit. It's also none of it, because as you said, it's incongruent. None of it makes any sense.
It
the
is.
virus 6 feet in the air. If they actually told people to crawl around on their hands and knees, do you think people would do it?
I think they would. Yeah. You can only come in here on hands and knees. Okay. I'll be safe. I'll protect others.
The stupidity can be seen. I don't know how many people have seen the memes where people in supermarkets in different parts of the world covered in the strange, just like plastic bags from head to toe, and like plastic bins, and like just the oddest and most ridiculous non-protective gear.
Well, they scared people really well, didn't they?
They did.
Straight up front with that false PCR test and cases and all that kind of stuff. And also along with the NHS, so you couldn't say anything bad about the NHS, because people didn't understand what was going on.
They've given us new identities with our test status or vaccination status.
Absolutely.
Although, as we worked out here, that you can choose to identify as you like, just as you can choose to say I'm in a woman's body but I identify as a man. You can say I haven't had a vaccination but I identify as double vaxxed. If it suits you.
If it suits you, that might be a little too incongruent for me. Yeah. So, but yeah, this notion of, thanks for Ray, for congruence is quite key to understanding ourselves really, and the things that we say we want to do and do we actually do them and say them, or are we just just verbalizing it and we don't actually take any action? Any other ways that you think they've been targeting?
I thought if the purpose was Great Reset, then the way to get rid of our identity is to lock us all away from ourselves, and then when we come out again, we can put on a mask, which is which is what they did with slaves in the 19th century.
Yeah.
And it also takes your identity away, and then that would have knock-on effects to the new normal. Yeah, you say, oh, well, you come out, but it's normal, but it's new. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely, and also, the people who are kind of going along with it, the people that are tranced out and in this hypnotic state that just believe everything that comes at them, there are a lot of them are really nice people, but they've just been captured. They've been, people that have been addicted to the BBC and just think the BBC is, everything that comes out of there has got to be right and anything else is wrong, and they just believe all that stuff. But they're nice people, and I've got a lot of friends that. I'm quite vocal about things, so a lot of my friends know that I'm a terrorist, and they kind of they accept me as a terrorist. They know that my guitar's all stickered up and everything, so it's out there. I sing protest songs. It's out there. They know what page I'm on. And I know what page they're on because I hear them say things like, "Oh, we can hug now, can't we?" It's like, yeah, like, I never stopped. Why did you stop? Oh, Boris told me I had to stop hugging. So there's this kind of sense of identity. When we come together, we don't talk about it. I don't talk about it because they don't want me to talk about it. They don't like anybody talking about it, and they'll either change the subject or walk away. So in order to accept them as friends, there are some people that I just say, okay, I know what page you're on. That's fine. We'll just play music together, or we'll just do some superficial conversation together, and they don't talk about it with each other either, or nothing. So this is kind of this weird relationship going on. Where you just can't be open and honest about certain things, because if you do, there's a danger that you'll break the spell, and don't break the spell. No, it's really good. Be safe with the spell.
They've also got people through the promise of the freedom pass, short tickets, get the job, and freedom pass.
Yeah, that's just out and out blackmail, isn't it?
Language as well, isn't it?
It is language, yeah.
You just talked about people being tranced out, and Miltonian language, and how those who are tranced out, why are they tranced out and we're not? Does that mean we're not hypnotizable, or?
Okay.
Hey Dave, can I just say something about that?
I just want to know.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I do have an answer for you, but I don't know if we have time to answer that today. But if you're happy to go on for a bit longer, we can cover it. Rick?
Well, just say like one sentence that it was interesting that you said earlier that you don't watch TV at all. From being on the street stall for the last 6 or 7 months, the number of people who've come up to the stall and have shared that they're on our side of things don't watch TV.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that's an absolute cast iron sort of causal relationship, but I do think there's a lot in it. There's something about TV, it kind of entrances people. It's not just the content, it's the actual technology itself has a major impact on people's belief systems, etc., etc. So those people who don't watch TV, I've known TV since 1992.
Yeah.
And it's one of the best things I ever did in my life to give up watching
Sure.
TV.
One of the best.
So my son, for example, who decided to be vaccinated, he's 25. He said to me, Mum, I choose to believe that actually what we're being told is, that they mean well. You can feel like this and all that. I can't remember what he said. He's super articulate and I'm not. And he's never watched TV.
Okay.
But he's, so it's why.
The social media is the new TV.
Well, there's
Social
that.
media is the new black kind of thing, like the newer generation. If he's 25, then
Yeah,
it's not a TV generation.
He's 25. He's also super intelligent and super discerning. And, I don't understand why some will believe in this shit.
Yeah. Well, I can go somewhere to give you an explanation for that, because it's something that I've been looking at for the last 18 months, and I asked myself that question, and I looked at NLP and I thought, what does NLP have to offer? And I think I found what it is. This will take a little while to explain. But going back to NLP, there's a guy called John Lilly, who had one of his books, and in the 60s he was looking at something called metaprogramming of the mind, the human biocomputer. And metaprograms are quite powerful in part of NLP. So there's one metaprogram, and this is like, if you like, it says towards and away, right? So this is a continuum. And people sit somewhere on this continuum as a towards and away. If you're a very strong towards person, then you don't have a great deal of fear. You're always going somewhere, you're headed somewhere, you have things to do, you want to get places, you're not worried about safety or anything too much, you just want to get things done and get there. Somebody that would be right on the other end of the continuum, away from, it's like they're always worried about safety and security. If I do this, would it be safe? Will it be secure? Or maybe I won't do it right now. You can actually pick this up in physiology. I mean, if you watch people who walk, people that are towards tend to lean forward and they tend to walk fairly quickly. People who are away from tend to walk a little bit more slowly. It's as if there could be something nasty I might step in, so I need to be really careful. They wouldn't, somebody who's away from wouldn't cross the road at a light with a red man, even if there was no traffic coming. They'll wait for the green man.
I've seen that myself in Poland. That's how people were in their mindset.
Yeah.
Even at 6 in the morning, standing at red lights with literally no cars in the street.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas towards, it's like there's a gap in the traffic. I don't give a shit what the light's doing. I'm crossing the road now because I want to get to the other side and I've got things to do. Right. So that's one continuum that people are on, and there are extremes, but you could be anywhere on that continuum. There's another one. This is. Got a little bit of tape.
There's a bit here.
Yeah. Keep slipping down. So options and procedures. Now, in NLP they've identified something like 12 or 13 different sets of metaprograms, but I've just pulled out the ones that I believe are the most powerful in terms of answering your question. So I would hazard a guess that most of us here are towards the options side. And options means we like choices. We may not want to make our mind up about something yet because something else might come up that will be more interesting. I might not want to put in my diary and pen because I might want to do something else that day instead. I want to keep my options open as much as possible. Whereas at the other end of the continuum, there are people where options would just drive them absolutely crazy. They need a procedure. So they'll like, yeah, today I've written a list of what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this first, then this, then this, then this, then this. And as they do them, they'll tick them off. And they love bullet points as well. So with procedures, if the government gives them a procedure, they'll just follow it. They'll just follow it. Whereas if you're options based, it's like I don't want to do that. Why would I want to lock down and stay in my house and not go out and have fun? You know, that's limiting me. So if you're more of an options sort of person, you're more likely to break the rules, because rules are just too confining. And there's another one, which I think is quite key. And this is reference. So this is external reference and internal reference. So that means, how do I make decisions for myself? What's my reference point for making decisions? Again, I'd hazard a guess that most of us here have an internal reference. We have an internal reference. I'm making a decision, a choice, because I've decided that that's what I want to do. Whereas somebody that has more of an external reference, it's like, well, I'm not sure what to do. I wonder what other people do. What are they doing? Oh yeah, that looks good, I'll do that. So they need some kind of external reference in order to make their decisions, and they'll do what other people do. So if you think about authority figures, somebody who's internally referenced is less likely to just go along with an authority figure. They're more likely to question that authority if it doesn't fit. And especially if you're internal reference and options. Well, what you're telling me, Mr. Authority, is that I can't do this and that and the other. Well, I'm sorry, I want to do that, because that's what my life is all about. So we're more likely to challenge things. Whereas an external reference person is more likely to just go along with what it is the authority figure's saying, and especially if they're external and procedural as well. Now imagine being externally referenced, procedural, and away from. Right? Yeah, you're going to need the government, because there's no way you're going to manage life on your own. You need some authority figure to guide you each day and tell you what to do. And so there's a section of the population that I reckon are like that.
A huge thing. I can't believe that.
But that's, in my view, what the education system is designed to create. Away, external, procedural thinking.
Yeah.
We don't teach embodiment, there's not, good internal congruency taught, and, there's so much left brain procedural, like
Absolutely,
learning,
yeah.
convergent fashion.
And I think it's been happening for years, and I think it's partly the IT industry, the way that computers you have to do this, then you do this, then you do that, and then you have to click this and accept that, etc. Yeah, so that's been going on. But also you had this creeping safety culture. It's like, oh, you tripped over the pavement, sue the bastards. Is it safe? Is the bus safe? Yes, it is safe to do this and to do that. I mean, we've become obsessed with safety over the years. People with clipboards just checking it's all okay and it's all certified and everything.
Yeah, with children, right, when they're climbing a wall or a tree or something, they're absolutely fine, they're embodied.
Yeah.
The moment you focus on them and think, shit, what are you doing? They'll fall.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
And there's no teaching about the gut and going with your intuition. That's been totally switched off.
Yeah, I totally agree. I agree with you. Quick answer. I think it's in the meta programs. It's the way that we, and you can try this. How many people here think that you're options? You like options. You like choices. You keep changing your mind here and there. Okay. Sorry. So this is how you piss people off. There are options, right? You say, hey, Jane, right? I need you to do something for me, right? But it has to be done in a specific way, right? So I'm going to write it down for you, one by one, and you need to follow that procedure exact. Otherwise, she's gone already. All right. So her mind has gone. She's gone. I'm switching off from this. That's kind of how it works. If you find somebody that's procedural and you go, why do you look down? You can do anything you want. You can go out and have fun, have a party. You can do this and you do that with your friends, and and you're waving your arms about, and they go, "You scary person, you scary person. We're supposed to be staying in and being good citizens." And of course, there's a whole body language assigned to this as well. Somebody who is options will tend to move their arms around like that. I mean, the body language suggests that I'm an options person. Whereas somebody who's more procedural, is likely to say, I've got a few things I want to mention to you today. First is this. Yeah. Second is this. third is this. You know, they count on their fingers. They'll give you bullet points, little lists of things, number them, that kind of thing.
Well, I was really expecting on the day that all the restrictions were ended. I went, great, you know, we'd just go outside and no one was wearing masks. So I was like shocked to see that there was like still virtually everyone was still doing the same procedure, you know.
They have to be told. They have to be told by the authority figure that it's okay to do that. Whereas,
but they weren't, were they? They were so we're relaxing the rules, but we encourage you to use your own, to do the right thing and think what's safe and right for you. And so that's the confusion, which means people are scared and carry on doing the most extreme.
Is there another thing around like the fact that we're not primarily intellectual beings, we're social creatures. So it's very easy for them because we actually police each other a lot more. So people go along to get along more than they do actually know what they're even thinking themselves. They're just going along because that's what the crowd does. There's some very funny videos where, you know, someone in a waiting room who knows the game gets up every 30 seconds or something, stands up, and then everyone who comes in who's not in on the game, they start standing up when he stands up, and then eventually he gets called into the room, you know, away, and the rest of them are standing up, and someone comes in and goes, why are we standing up like this? I don't know, just they were doing it.
External reference, definitely, but you know, we don't want to really think about them as extremes because there are people at different. It is a continuum, and they are contextual. So you could have like one set of patterns that are running for you, maybe when you do your work, and then a completely different set of patterns that when you're at home. And this is what keeps us from going crazy. You know, people that have OCD, right? Where does OCD come from? It comes from having the same pattern at work as at home. So at work, they're at work, and it's like, oh yeah, I've got to keep my desk tidy, I've got to do this, I've got to finish all this, I've got to write my notes, oh I didn't finish that, oh that's dirty, that's clean that, you know, OCD, and then they go home, and they do the same thing. So 24/7 they're doing OCD, and suddenly they get stressed out. Whereas you can do the OCD thing at work, but if you're at home and you're going, I can take it easy now, you've got a different set of patterns running, it stops you from going crazy.
OCD's probably increased massively, right, with the whole sanitising the hands, all of these things, they're like rituals.
Yeah, the rituals. And also, you mentioned confusion. Confusion's a big aspect of hypnotherapy. It's keeping people in a confused state. And the way Milton Erickson used to do it, you know, he'd talk to people in different ways. And he'd say things that didn't really make sense to them. You know, so it's like, you may not want to go into a deeper sleep right now. You may want to climb that mountain that you always wished you wanted to climb, but you know, as you walk down that mountain, then you realise that suddenly you're feeling a little tired. And maybe it does seem good to go into that place right now that seems safe, dark, and deep. You know, and it's just nonsense. It's confusing nonsense. And after the mind just goes, oh, switches off. Yeah, okay.
About like the stages of destabilisation and demoralisation and that sort of. So you have waves of terror, and then you get a bit of respite. You know, where they relax things, and then just to lock you down again and sort of demoralising, right?
And the constant moving goalposts, the gaslighting. All that bullshit lying most of the time.
Absolutely. I mean, I just see it as a massive global Darren Brown show, you know. Darren Brown even revealed his techniques, you know, and the first thing he gets you to do when you sign up is he asks you to do something, so you do it for him. You send him an email address, or then you get there, you have to sign something, so you sign something. So he's asked you to do two things and you've done them, and each time he asks you to do something else, he asks you a little bit more. So eventually you become programmed into doing whatever he asks for, and he's the authority. Has anyone been on hypnotherapy training, by the way? You've trained hypnotherapists? One of the key things about being a good hypnotherapist is confidence. If I'm going to say go to sleep, I have to be 1000% confident in my voice, in my body language, in my tone, that you're going to go to sleep. All right? Because if you sense any lack of confidence in me, you're not going to go to sleep. So confidence is a big thing in hypnotherapy. And the way the government speak, you know, even though they're telling you the ridiculous porky pies, they'll try and say it with as much confidence as they can, with the incongruity that they can't escape from. But most people won't pick that up. They'll just see the authority figure speaking in a certain kind of voice, and then you just kind of follow along with it.
not what's being said, it's how it's being said. That
Exactly.
The power is within.
Absolutely.
There's a really interesting man, an American man, Daniel Schmachtenberger.
Oh, he's great.
And he has some YouTube videos that are fantastic called The War on Sense Making.
Right.
And it really helped me last year where I just kind of like shook my head and went, oh, I just don't fucking know. And then I was like, yeah, right, because there's a war on sense making and it's very much as a result of what you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I see these meta programs as being kind of a way, and there's a lot to it. There's the confusion. There's also this sense of when you turn on, if you do watch the TV, particularly the BBC News, whatever, you get the fear, going along the ticker tape.
Yeah.
But the voices are like, you get the BBC voice, and then there's a lot of red, and it's like soothing. It's like soothing to watch all the negative stuff going through there. The BBC Radio 4, the soothing voices, It's like, this must be really good because it's calming, it's soothing. This is this voice of authority here, Whereas when they come along and see a protest, they just go, all right, people shouting through megaphones, and it's just not soothing at all. It's a total mismatch of what they're used to. And then there's no way they're going to be attracted to that. You're not going to turn people on by shouting at them through a megaphone.
Yeah, it's also one of the reasons why politicians speak in broken record with scripted ideas. They hate going off into their own dialogue because they know they can't maintain that confidence. Absolutely.
Yeah, what they say is well worked out, very much worked out.
Did you see the interview with Fauci and a Mexican comedian? Got caught off guard. It was absolutely brilliant.
No, I didn't see that.
Fauci's just lying. Everything that comes out of his mouth is a lie. And the Mexican, I think he was told, this is going to be a really easy interview and these are the questions you'll be asked. And then he went off script. And he actually, at one point, he was wiping his brow and because he didn't know what to say. And the guy was catching him out every other second or something. It was absolutely, if you can find it, do it. It's worth watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And the other thing that actually this is key in is pattern recognition. So all of us here recognize the patterns. We know what patterns they're running. It's like put the screws down, loosen them up a bit. Tighten the screws down, loosen them up a bit. Keep giving you encouraging notions that things are going to get better, but then they get worse. And all the confusion is there. So it's kind of all worked out. It's all worked out. It's all planned. It's all pre-planned. Everything that they say will be worked out very specifically, in terms of what to say, when to say it, the timing of it all as well. Because if they lock you down for too long, people might start to think about stuff. So it really is all well planned in my book.